You don't actually own your house. You rent it from the government, and the rent is called property tax. And if you ever doubt who really owns it, try not paying that rent for a few years and see who shows up to take it. I say that as a man who believed in real estate his entire adult life. I read Rich Dad Poor Dad like it was scripture. I built a career next to the housing market. I believed a paid off home was the safest, most solid thing an American could own. And then, slowly, from the inside, I started counting how many different people can reach into a property that's supposedly mine. And I got honest with myself about what ownership really means. Today I'm going to walk you through that because your home is probably the biggest chunk of your net worth, and it is nowhere near as much yours as you've been told. And I'll show you the one asset that finally is. Start with the tax because it's the one everybody accepts without thinking. You buy a house, you pay it off, and you feel like you own it free and clear. But you don't get to stop paying. Every year, forever, you owe the government a property tax, and it never ends, not even after the mortgage is gone. Think about what that actually is. If you have to pay a fee every year to keep something, and losing it is the penalty for not paying, you don't own that thing. You're leasing it permanently. The deed has your name on it, but the arrangement is a lease with no final payment, and the landlord is the county. A truly owned thing doesn't come with rent. Your house does. You just call the rent taxes so it feels like ownership. That's the first crack, and it's the gentle one. It gets sharper. Because the tax collector isn't the only one who can reach in. Let me count the hands that can touch your own property. The government can take it outright through eminent domain, force you to sell so they can build a road, or hand the land to a developer. A court can put a lien on it. In many situations, assets can be seized through civil forfeiture. And if you own property as an investment, if you're a landlord counting on that rent for retirement, then in states like New York and California, they can cap and even freeze what you're allowed to charge. Your tenant's rent is your income, and a rent board you never voted for can freeze it in place while your taxes, your insurance, and your repair bills keep climbing. You own the building. You do not fully own the decision of what to do with it. Count them up: the tax man, the eminent domain man, the lien, the forfeiture, the rent board. That is a lot of hands with a lot of levers on the asset you were told is the safest thing you can hold. And notice, this is the exact pattern from the whole series. Every one of those is a person or an institution with the power to reach into your asset and change the terms. And there's a new hand about to join them that almost no homeowner has heard about yet. One that could let them freeze your property with a keystroke. I keep a running breakdown of exactly who can reach into each asset you own, real estate included, on my site, and I'll point you there in a minute. Stay with me, because this last one is the future, and it's coming fast. Here's the part that turned my old real estate faith all the way skeptical. They're tokenizing it. The biggest financial institutions in the world are working to put real-world assets, including real estate, on chain, turning them into digital tokens. And I've shown you before what these institutions build into their tokens, in their own words. The ability to freeze, to pause, to force a transfer, to claw back. The plumbing company at the center of the US financial system has literally listed freeze and unfreeze as a feature of the tokenized assets they're rolling out. Read that again. A built-in freeze button. Now imagine your home equity, or your real estate investment, wrapped in one of those tokens a few years from now. It doesn't just have a rent board and a tax man on top of it anymore. It has a platform with a switch. Your ownership becomes a token somebody else can pause. This is the mortgage machine from episode 2, run on your house itself, another layer stacked on top of you, and this one has a kill switch baked in from the factory. So here's the honest, uncomfortable conclusion, and I say it as a former believer. Real estate feels like the ultimate escape. It's real, it's physical, it's outside the stock market, it feels like yours. But structurally, it is the most exposed asset you can own. It cannot move, it cannot hide, it is registered with the government by law. It can be taxed forever, seized, liened, rent frozen, and now tokenized with a freeze switch. It is the single easiest asset on earth for other people to reach. Remember the idea from the Posar episode? Inside money versus outside money? Inside money is anything that's really a promise the system sits on top of and can freeze or dilute. Real estate looks like outside money, like real, solid, can't be printed wealth. But the way it actually behaves, with the state sitting on top of every square foot, it's inside money wearing a hard hat. Your biggest store of wealth is the one most exposed to other people's decisions. And I believed the opposite for 30 years. So where does that leave a saver who wants something real to hold? Something that isn't a promise the system sits on top of? There's one significant asset a 65-year-old can own that doesn't have a government sitting on top of it. Bitcoin, held in your own custody. No property tax, nobody sends you an annual bill to keep it, no eminent domain, there's no physical thing on a map for them to condemn. No rent board, there's no committee deciding what you're allowed to do with it. And no freeze switch, because when you hold your own Bitcoin, there's no platform, no bank, no custodian in the middle who can pause it. 21 million, and not one of them sits in a government registry. Now, I'm going to be more honest than most people in this space will be with you, because credibility is the only thing I'm actually selling. Bitcoin is only free of those hands if you hold it yourself. If you leave it sitting on an exchange, that exchange is a custodian. It's the bank in the middle, and it can be frozen just like your reserves, just like your rent. That's not a knock on Bitcoin, it's the whole point of it. The asset gives you the ability to hold something no one can reach, but you have to actually take hold of it. Do that, and for the first time you're holding a major asset with no landlord, no rent board, and no switch. I'll show you exactly how that's done, simply, in another episode. That breakdown of who can reach into each asset you own, your house, your bonds, your bank account, your Bitcoin on an exchange versus in your own hands, is at timtalksfinance.com/members, in plain English. It's part of the membership. I built it because most people have never once sat down and counted the hands on their own property. And when you finally do, safe as houses stops sounding like a compliment. I'm not telling you to sell your home. You live in it. A home you live in is shelter, and shelter is worth owning even with the county as your landlord. And I'm not telling you what any of this is worth next year. What I'm telling you, as a man who worshipped real estate and had to grow up, is to be clear-eyed about how many hands are on your biggest asset, and to know there's exactly one meaningful asset with no hands on it at all if you hold it right. How much of your wealth you want in each is your call. That's a probability to weigh. I just refuse to let you weigh it, still believing your house is fully yours. Because I did, and it isn't. So, the house I believed was the safest thing I could own. It turned out to have a landlord I'd never counted. The state. Sitting on top of it. With a tax bill that never ends. A dozen ways to reach in. And now a freeze switch on the way. That's not the escape I thought I'd found. It's the most inside asset there is, dressed up as the most solid. The only significant thing I've found with truly no hands on it, no tax, no rent board, no registry, no switch, is Bitcoin, held in my own custody. 21 million, and nobody's landlord. The breakdown's at timtalksfinance.com/members. Next episode is the last one, and it ties this whole series together, because after 17 years of chasing the right asset to own, I finally figured out that I had the asset wrong the entire time. It isn't the house. It isn't even the Bitcoin. I'll show you what it is. I'm Tim. I'll see you there.